Welcome back to the deep dive. So today we're wrestling with something that looks pretty simple on the surface, but is actually quite a challenge. English prepositions.
Yeah, those tiny little words, right. To, of, in, on, at. They seem insignificant sometimes.
Exactly. But people call them the unsung workhorse, or maybe the connective tissue of English. They're sort of the invisible scaffolding holding it all together.
That's a really good way to put it, connective tissue. Because their job is, well, vital. They establish the relationship, could be spatial, temporal, even conceptual between a noun or pronoun and everything else in the sentence.
Okay, so that's the core idea. Establishing a link. The classic example everyone uses is spatial, isn't it? Like the cat sat on the table.
Right. The preposition on creates that link. And that whole unit on the table, that's your prepositional phrase, super versatile.
And in that case, it's acting like an adverb, telling us where the cat sat.
Exactly. Modifying the verb sat. But, and this is important, they can also work as adjectives. Think about the woman with the red hat.
Ah, right. With the red hat, tells us which woman. Modifies the noun woman.
Precisely. So they have these dual functions.
Now, that sounds logical enough, maybe even a bit rigid, especially with those basic examples. But we know prepositions are, like, consistently one of the biggest headaches for advanced English learners.
Oh, absolutely. One of the last hurdles, really.
So what's our mission for this deep dives? We need to get past just defining them, right? Tackle why they're so tricky.
Exactly. I think it boils down to three main challenges, especially once you're beyond the basics. First, just the sheer number of multiple meanings.
Okay.
You take one tiny word, like at. You need it for a place at the cinema, and you also need it for time at midnight. That juggling act, switching contexts constantly, is tough.
Right. Cognitive load, as you put it in the notes. Okay, what's the second one?
The second is subtle nuance. This is where you have pairs of prepositions that look like they should mean the same thing, but they don't. They're not synonyms.
Ah, like the example you gave, thinking of you versus thinking about you.
Exactly. Very different emotional way, right? Just changing that one little word shifts the whole feeling. One implies affection, the other more contemplation.
Okay, so multiple meanings, subtle nuances.
Yeah.
What's the third big hurdle?
This is the big one, really. Idiomatic use. This is where, frankly, logic just goes out the window.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. We're talking about fixed combinations, phrasal verbs, collocations. The meaning is often completely non-literal. It has nothing to do with the original spatial or temporal meaning of the preposition. You just have to memorize them.
Like insist on something. There's no real onness about insisting.
Precisely. Or belong to, why to. There's no logical rule. It's just how it is, convention.
So our goal today is to kind of build a framework. Start with the logic where the rules actually work, and then carefully step into that, well, that idiomatic minefield. Give people tools to handle both.
That's the plan. A systematic approach. From the logical foundations to the, let's say, non-logical conventions.
Okay, part one then. Foundational principles. Let's start where the logic feels strongest. Space, and the big three. In, on, and at.
Right. And the key insight here, the thing that really helps learners get a handle on this, is that the choice between in, on, and at for place is almost always driven by specificity.
Specificity, okay, like a hierarchy.
Exactly. A very clear, logical hierarchy. Once you visualize it, it's a powerful mnemonic. It really sticks.
So where do we start? Most general.
Most general, least specific is IN. Think big areas or think enclosed spaces. Encapsulation is a good keyword for in.
Okay, so large geographic areas, countries, cities.
Yep. Countries, states, continents, big cities. He lives in Canada. They work in Chicago. It's for large, sort of undefined areas. And it's also for being physically inside a container or an enclosed space.
Like the milk is in the fridge.
Yeah.
Or I'm sitting in the car.
Perfect examples. Three-dimensional enclosure, that's in.
All right. Moving down a level in specificity, we get to IN. What's the key idea here?
On loses the idea of enclosure. It's about surfaces and lines.
Surfaces. Okay, like the book is on the table, horizontal.
Horizontal or vertical. There's a picture on the wall. It's about contact with a surface. And crucially, we also use on for linear things.
Linear, like roads, streets.
Exactly. I live on Maple Street. And also for floors in a building, which you can think of as sort of stacked surfaces. My office is on the third floor.
Okay, that makes sense. And for big areas enclosures, on for surface lines. So the most specific must be AT.
At is the pinpoint, maximum precision. It signals a specific point on the map or, and this is a key nuance, a specific point of activity.
Okay, so exact street addresses. She works at 123 Main Street.
Precisely, the most granular location. But also, think about meeting points. Let's meet at the main entrance. That's a specific spot.
And you mentioned point of activity. How does that work?
Well, this is where it gets interesting. You might physically be in the library building, right, an enclosed space. But we often say, I'm at the library.
Because you're referring to the activity, the function of the place, not just the building itself.
Exactly. You're thinking of it as a point on the town map, a place where you do something, study, borrow books. So we're often at the library, at school, at the office, at the park, even if technically we're inside them.
That's a really useful distinction. The point of activity idea helps explain some cases that might seem like exceptions.
It does. But the underlying logic, that hierarchy of specificity, still holds beautifully. You can stack them.
How so?
Think about it. A person lives in a country, most general, on a particular street within that country, more specific, linear, and at a precise house number on that street, most specific point.
In France, on Rue Victor Hugo at number 15.
Perfect. See? In, on, at. Decreasing scale, increasing specificity. If you can internalize that spatial hierarchy, you've honestly solved a huge chunk of common preposition errors.
Okay, that's a really solid foundation for place. What about relative positions, like between versus among?
Right. This one is mostly about quantity, which makes it fairly straightforward, at least initially.
Between is for two things, right?
Yeah. Exactly. 2 items, 2 points, 2 people. The negotiations were between the 2 companies. Switzerland lies between France, Germany, Austria, and Italy. Wait, that's more than 2. Okay. Traditionally, between is for 2. Divide the cake between your brother and sister.
And among is for 3 or more.
3 or more. The inheritance was divided among the 5 children. There was disagreement among the committee members. Clear distinction based on number.
You mentioned amidst too. How does that fit in? Is it the same as among?
It means the same thing, sort of in the middle of a group, but amidst sounds a bit more formal, maybe slightly literary or even old-fashioned compared to among.
Any other difference?
There's a slight tendency phonetically to use among before words, starting with consonants, and amidst before vowels, like amidst the chaos or amidst all the excitement, but it's not a strict rule at all. Among works fine there too. Amidst just feels a bit weightier sometimes.
What about that example you almost used between with more than 2 countries? Is that becoming acceptable?
Ah, yes. Good catch. Colloquially, especially in modern usage, you do hear between used when you're talking about distinct named entities, even if there are more than 2, like a treaty between the UK, the US, and Canada.
So even though there are 3, because they're specific named parties, people might use between.
Increasingly, yes. While a strict grammarian might insist on among there, the use of between to highlight the distinct relationships connecting multiple individual items is definitely gaining ground. It shows how language evolves. You need to know the traditional rule, but also recognize how it's used now.
Got it. Okay, let's move vertically. Above, over, under, beneath. What guides the choice here?
Contact and context are key, and sometimes movement.
So above.
Above generally means simply higher than something else, with no contact. The clock is above the fireplace, there's space between them.
And over, it also means higher, but...
Over often implies covering, or movement across something at a higher level. Think, put a blanket over the sleeping child, that's covering, potential contact. Or the helicopter flew over the building, that's movement across a higher plane.
So over carries that extra sense of covering or crossing.
Often, yes. Now, going down, under, is the most common word for being lower than something. The cat is hiding under the bed. Simple position.
What about beneath and underneath? Are they just fancier versions of under?
Pretty much. Beneath can sound a bit more formal or literary. It can also have a figurative sense, like that kind of behavior is beneath you, meaning unworthy. Underneath specifically emphasizes being directly covered by something.
Like the wires run underneath the floorboards.
Yeah.
Directly covered.
Exactly. Or the car park underneath the shopping center. It suggests being structurally covered, but honestly, for most everyday situations, under works perfectly fine. The core idea, though, is consistent. These prepositions are describing precise physical relationships, contact, covering, relative height.
Okay, so we've got the spatial logic down, especially that in on at hierarchy. What's really neat is how that same logic carries over into part 2, talking about time.
It really is one of the most helpful parallels in English grammar. That same principle of specificity from general to pinpoint applies almost perfectly to time as well. It gives learners something solid to hold on to.
So if that was the most specific for place, it's the same for time.
Exactly. AT is for the most precise points in time, clock times, at 5 p.m., at 6:30, specific meal times, at lunchtime, points in the day, at noon, at midnight. And also for specific holiday periods viewed as a point, at Christmas, at Easter.
Okay, pinpoint times. Then moving slightly less specific, we get one, just like for streets or surfaces.
It's just like that. On A is for specific days and dates. Days of the week, on Friday, on Sundays. Specific calendar dates, on December 25th, on your anniversary. Special name days, on my birthday.
So anything that occupies a single calendar day slot gets on. Makes sense. I remember you mentioned a slight difference with weekends.
Ah, yes. Usage does vary a bit geographically. In American English, it's standard to say on the weekend. In British English, you'll very often hear at the weekend. But for specific days, like on Monday, everyone agrees.
Good nuance to know. Okay, so at 4 points, on for days dates.
Yeah.
Which leaves IN for the longest, most general periods.
Precisely. In covers larger chunks of time, parts of the day. In the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. Though we often say at night, interestingly enough, maybe thinking of it as a point.
Yeah, at night is a common exception.
But otherwise, in is for months in April, seasons in winter, years in 1999, decades in the 60s, centuries in the 18th century, and even longer, vaguer periods like in the past or in the future.
The parallel really holds up. You live in a country, general place. You were born in a year, general time. You live on a street, specific line. You have a meeting on a specific date, specific day. You meet at an address point. You meet at a clock time point.
It's remarkably consistent. If you teach that parallel structure, it often produces a real aha moment for learners.
Definitely. Okay, beyond in, on, at, we need to talk about measuring time, duration, deadlines. Let's start with for versus during. They seem similar but aren't quite the same.
They're often confused. The key difference is what they focus on. For measures the total length, the duration, it answers how long. Okay, we talked for 2 hours. The focus is the span.
Okay, and during.
During indicates that something happened within a particular period, but not necessarily for the entire duration of that period. I fell asleep during the lecture. You weren't asleep for the whole hour, just at some point within it. She visited many museums during her stay in Paris. The visiting happened within the stay.
Got it. For duration, within the period, what about since?
Since marks the starting point of an action or state that began in the past and continues up to the present. It's almost always used with perfect tenses, especially the present perfect. He has worked here since 2015. The working started in 2015 and is still ongoing.
Okay, marks the start of something continuous. Now, a really crucial pair, especially things like schedules and contracts. By versus until.
Yes, this distinction is critical and trips up even advanced speakers sometimes. They both relate to time limits, but in very different ways.
So, by is the deadline.
Exactly. By then indicates the absolute latest time something must be completed. The action itself is often a single event or completion. You need to submit the report by 5 p.m. This means 5 p.m. is the cutoff. Anytime before or exactly at 5 p.m. is okay.
And until.
Until, or till, refers to a continuous action or state that stops at a particular time. The activity goes on up to that point and then ceases. The shop is open until 6 p.m. At 6:01, it's closed. I'll be out of the office until Monday. My absence continues right up to the beginning of Monday.
So for a deadline for completion until for the end point of a continuous state or action.
That's the core difference. Confusing them can lead to major misunderstandings, like missing a deadline versus planning to work right up to it.
Absolutely critical.
Woo!
Okay, shifting gears within part 2 now. Let's talk about prepositions of movement and direction. You mentioned a key principle here.
Yes. The absolute most important factor when choosing prepositions of movement is the verb. Does the verb describe motion or does it describe a static state? That choice dictates the preposition.
Okay, so the verb is king here. Let's take the classic pair. Into versus in.
Right. Into requires a verb of motion. It describes movement from outside to inside an enclosed space. She walked into the room. He jumped into the water. There has to be movement.
And in is for.
In follows verbs of state or position. It describes where something is, not where it's going. She is sitting in the room. He is swimming in the water. No transition implied, just location.
So jumped into the box, motion, versus the cat is in the box, location.
Perfect. The same logic applies to onto versus on.
Okay, so onto needs a verb of motion towards a surface.
Exactly. The cat leaped onto the roof. He spilled coffee onto the keyboard. Movement towards the surface.
Whereas on describes the static position on the surface. The cat is sleeping on the roof. There's coffee on the keyboard.
Spot on. Motion versus state dictated by the verb.
What about destination versus just general direction?
Another important distinction. To usually indicates the final destination, the intended endpoint of the movement. We drove to the beach implies arrival.
And toward.
Toward or towards, indicates the direction of movement but doesn't guarantee arrival at the destination. He walked toward the park, but then turned left. It's about the path or bearing, not necessarily the end result.
Okay, destination versus direction. And finally, prepositions for following a path.
Yep.
Like along, across, through.
Right. Along means following the line or edge of something. We strolled along the riverbank, parallel movement.
Across.
Across means moving from one side to the other, perpendicular to the length. She swam across the lake. Be careful when you walk across the road, side to side.
And through. This one seems different.
It is. Through implies movement within something, often something that encloses or obstructs on multiple sides. It suggests passing inside a three-dimensional space or a barrier. We drove through the tunnel. They hiked through the dense forest. He pushed his way through the crowd.
So you sail across a lake, open surface, but you walk through a forest, enclosed space.
Precisely. Saying you sailed through the lake would sound very odd, implying you were somehow submerged or navigating its depths. The dimensionality of the space matters for through.
Okay, we've navigated the logical landscapes of space and time and movement. We had rules, we had hierarchies, but now we venture into part 3, the idiomatic frontier. This is where, as you said, the rules kind of break down.
Yeah, this is where we shift gears significantly. We move from deduction, applying logic, to basically, well, convention and memorization.
We're talking about phrasal verbs, fixed collocations, the stuff that just is, without a clear logical why.
Exactly. The meaning of the combination, the verb plus its particle or preposition, often has little or nothing to do with the original meaning of the parts. They've fused together over time to create a new lexical unit.
So the main strategy here is just learn them.
Largely, yes, but we can be smart about how we learn them. It helps to understand the types of combinations. For instance, distinguishing between true phrasal verbs and prepositional verbs.
Okay, that sounds technical, but potentially useful. What's the difference?
In a true phrasal verb, the little word after the verb, like up, down, out, off, often acts more like an adverb. It fundamentally changes the verb's core meaning. Think give versus give up. Totally different meanings. Look versus look up information.
Right, and those phrasal verbs can often be split up, can't they? You can turn the light off or turn off the light.
Exactly. That separability is a key feature of many transitive phrasal verbs. The particle can often move after the object, especially if the object is a pronoun. Turn it off, not turn off it.
Okay, so that's phrasal verbs. What about prepositional verbs?
With prepositional verbs, the verb usually keeps its basic meaning, but it grammatically requires a specific preposition to connect it to its object. Think listen to music, depend on someone, approve of an idea.
And these can't be separated. You can't listen to music too.
Never. The preposition has to stay right after the verb. Listen to it, depend on her, approve of it. That fixed structure is the hallmark of a prepositional verb. Recognizing whether a combination is phrasal, potentially separable, meaning changes, or prepositional, inseparable, specific link needed, is a big step for learners.
That distinction alone seems really helpful for organizing the learning. Okay, let's dive into some examples from the material that show subtle differences or just fixed pairings.
Sure. Take agree. The preposition changes based on the object. You agree on a topic or a plan. Let's agree on a meeting time. But you agree with a person or their opinion. I agree with you completely.
So the object dictates the preposition. What about dream? Dream of versus dream about.
Subtle one. Often interchangeable, but there's a tendency. Dream about usually refers to the actual content of a dream you had while sleeping. I dreamed about flying last night. Dream of can certainly mean that too, but it often carries a sense of aspiration, wishing, or longing. She dreams of becoming a doctor. He dreams of a peaceful retirement.
So dream of leans more towards aspiration. Interesting. Another tricky one you listed was blame.
Yes. This one clearly shows how the object governs the preposition. You blame a person for an action or result. They blamed the goalkeeper for the loss the person gets for.
Okay.
But you blame the result on a cause or factor. They blame the loss on the bad weather. The thing event gets on. So blame someone for something, but blame something on something else.
That's a very specific pattern to learn. And beyond these nuanced pairs, they're just the mandatory ones, right?
Absolutely. Hundreds of them. You just have to know that you object to something, rely on someone, worry about the future, succeed in doing something, believe in an idea, concentrate on a task. There's no deeper logic. It's just the fixed partner the verb takes.
Pure convention. Okay. Moving slightly beyond verb pairings, prepositions also help define cause, reason, and purpose. Let's unpack cause versus reason first.
Right. Generally, cause refers to the direct, often external or uncontrollable factor that led to something. The picnic was canceled because of the rain. The rain is the direct cause. Prepositions like because of, due to, on account of often signal cause.
And reason?
Reason usually implies the motive, the internal justification, or the intentional choice behind an action. He resigned out of principle, she helped him from a sense of duty. Prepositions like out of or from can indicate reason or motive. The line can blur sometimes, but cause is more direct event linkage. Reason is more about the why in terms of intent.
This brings us straight to that notorious grammar point. Due to versus because of. You hear them used interchangeably all the time, but formally there's a rule, isn't there?
Oh, yes. A very persistent rule, especially in formal writing. It hinges on grammar, what part of speech they are.
Okay, break it down for us. Due to.
Due is originally an adjective. Think of the payment is due. So due to functions as an adjective phrase. This means it should modify a noun and typically follows a form of the verb to be, is, was, are, etc.
So, the cancellation was due to the storm. Due to the storm modifies the noun cancellation.
Exactly. A good test is to see if you can replace due to with caused by. The cancellation was caused by the storm. If that works, due to is likely correct formally.
Okay. And because of.
Because of functions as an adverbial phrase. It modifies a verb, an adjective, or another adverb telling you why something happened.
So, the picnic was canceled because of the storm. Here, because of the storm modifies the verb was canceled.
Precisely. So formally, noun plus be plus due to. Verb plus because of. His success was due to hard work, modify success. He succeeded because of hard work, modify succeeded.
Is this rule strictly followed in, say, everyday conversation?
Honestly, not really. You'll hear due to used adverbially all the time. But in formal writing, academic papers, legal documents, sticking to the distinction is often expected and signals a higher level of grammatical precision. It's one of those markers of careful usage.
Good to know the formal rule, even if it's been informally. Okay, last bit in this section, purpose. Using to versus for.
Right. When we want to express the purpose or intention behind an action, and the purpose is another action, we usually use to, followed by the infinitive form of the verb.
Like, I went to the shop to buy milk. The purpose was to buy.
Exactly. She's studying hard to pass the exam. Purpose to pass.
Okay. And when do we use for purpose?
We typically use for when the purpose is a noun or a gerund, the ing form of a verb acting like a noun. This machine is for slicing bread. Slicing here is a gerund. We went out for a pizza. Pizza is a noun. What did you do that for?
So to plus verb infinitive for plus noun gerund. That seems clear. But you mentioned an advanced trap.
Yes, the confusion between the preposition to, which takes a noun or pronoun object like go to the park, and the infinitive marker to, which comes before a verb like wanna go. They look the same.
Ah. So how do we tell them apart, especially when to is expressing purpose?
There's a handy diagnostic test using sentence structure. If the to plus verb phrase expresses purpose, it often functions as an adverbial phrase, and you can usually move it to the beginning of the sentence.
Okay, give me an example.
I exercise regularly to stay healthy. Can we move the to phrase?
To stay healthy, I exercise regularly. Yes, that works fine.
Right. So in that sentence, to stay healthy is an adverbial phrase of purpose. And to is essentially introducing that purpose. Now try this. I need to go now.
Can I move it? To go now? No, that sounds completely wrong.
Exactly. In I need to go, to is simply the infinitive marker, part of the verb phrase to go. It's not expressing a separate purpose that can be moved around. This fronting test is a great way to check if to plus verb is functioning as a purpose clause.
All right, we've covered the logic, the hierarchies, the movement rules, and dived into the sometimes illogical world of idioms and fixed pairings. For part 4, let's focus on consolidating this, looking at common pitfalls and how to apply all this strategically.
Sounds good. A good place to start is with those idioms that go beyond just verb pairings, whole phrases where the preposition is key, but the meaning is totally non-literal.
You mean things that aren't just like rely on, but bigger chunks?
Exactly. Phrases you just have to learn as a single unit, like by accident versus on purpose. The prepositions are crucial, but there's no spatial or temporal logic connecting by with accidents or on with purpose.
Or like for good, meaning permanently, he's left the country for good.
Perfect example. Or being out of breath, in trouble, under pressure. These are fixed idiomatic chunks. Vocabulary learning, essentially, where the preposition is just part of the lexical item.
Right. Okay, now we have to address the elephant in the grammar room. The so-called rule about not ending a sentence with a preposition.
Ah, the zombie rule. Yes, it just won't die, even though linguists have been debunking it for ages.
Where did it even come from? It feels so unnatural sometimes to avoid it.
It came from 17th and 18th century grammarians who were, well, a bit obsessed with Latin. In Latin, prepositions genuinely cannot come at the end of a sentence. They must precede their object. So these guys tried to impose Latin structure onto English.
Which doesn't really work, does it?
Not naturally, no. English is a Germanic language, and our syntax is perfectly happy having prepositions at the end, especially in questions. Who did you give it to? Or relative clauses. That's the book I was looking for.
So the famously awkward correction like, with whom are you going, instead of who are you going with, is based on this flawed Latin analogy.
Entirely. While with whom is grammatically correct in a very formal, traditional sense, it often sounds incredibly stiff and unnatural in most contexts. Winston Churchill supposedly quipped about this rule, "This is the sort of English up with which I will not put."
Huh. That sums it up nicely. So what's the takeaway for an advanced learner? Ignore the rule completely.
Not quite ignore, I'd say. Understand where the rule came from. Recognize that in very formal writing, some people might still expect you to avoid ending with a preposition if you can do so gracefully. But, and this is the key, prioritize naturalness and clarity. Don't twist your sentence into knots just to avoid a final preposition if the natural phrasing sounds better. Advanced skill is knowing the rule, but also knowing when and why to break it for effective communication.
Good advice. Clarity over archaic rules. Okay, let's hit a couple of those tricky look-alike distinctions that often catch people out. Time first. In time versus on time.
Yes, very important difference. On time means punctual, exactly at the scheduled time. The 9:00 train left on time, right at 9:00.
And in time.
In time means before the deadline or early enough for something. It implies having enough time to spare, often with a sense of relief. The meeting was at 10:00, but we arrived at 9:45, so we were in time for coffee beforehand. You weren't necessarily punctual at 9:45, but you were early enough.
So on time, punctual. In time, early enough.
Got it.
What about getting into vehicles in a car but on a bus?
This trips people up constantly, but it goes right back to our spatial logic from part one, enclosure versus surface.
Ah, okay. So you get in a car or maybe a small truck or a taxi because it's a personal enclosed space you sit inside.
Exactly. But you get on a bus, on a train, on a plane, on a ship, because these are larger public conveyances. You're essentially stepping onto a platform or deck designed for carrying many people.
Like cystic out to a surface. And that logic extends to other things too.
It does. You get on a bicycle, on a motorbike, on a horse. You're positioned on top of them on the surface. So in for private enclosures, on for public transport surfaces and things you ride on top of.
That connection back to the core spatial logic makes it much easier to remember. Okay, let's try to pull all these threads together. That narrative exercise you included about Mr. Hill arriving in New York seems like a good way to see it all in action.
It really is a compact demonstration. The first sentence alone hits the temporal and spatial hierarchies hard. Mr. Hill arrived in New York.
Big geographic area, so in.
On May 10th.
Specific date, so on.
At 8 o'clock.
Precise time, so at.
In the evening.
General part of the day, so in. 4 prepositions, 4 different rules, all in one sentence.
Then it shifts. He decided to call on his uncle.
That's idiomatic, right? A phrasal verb meaning to visit.
Exactly. No spatial logic there. Then, needing transport, he got on a bus.
Public conveyance surface, so on.
And put his fare into the fare box.
Verb of motion. Put into an enclosed space. Fare box. So into.
Then, reaching the destination, he walked to the apartment building.
Destination endpoint. So to.
And knocked at the door.
Specific point of contact activity. So at.
And the final bit. He found no one at home.
Which is another fixed idiom, isn't it? Like at school or at work. Point of activity state.
Precisely. That little story forces you to switch constantly between applying logical rules, place, time, movement, and retrieving fixed idiomatic pairings. That's the reality of using prepositions correctly. Hashtag tag outro.
Wow, okay. That really was a deep dive. We've gone from the, well, surprisingly logical rules governing in, on, at for both space and time, all the way through movement, and then into that tricky idiomatic territory.
We covered a lot of ground. I think the main takeaway for you listening is really about strategic recognition. Can you identify in the moment why a certain preposition is needed?
Is it following a logical rule? Specificity, surface, enclosure, movement, destination?
Exactly. Or is it simply part of a fixed phrase, a phrasal verb or collocation that doesn't follow logic and just needs to be known?
Once you can make that distinction, is this logic or is this convention? The task of choosing the right preposition becomes much less daunting, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It tells you whether you need to analyze the situation or just retrieve the fixed phrase from your memory.
Which brings us to a final thought, sort of circling back to that discussion about ending sentences with prepositions or the due to because of debate.
Right. It's about realizing that true mastery isn't just about knowing rules, especially historical ones. It's also about understanding that language is fluid. It's contextual.
So sometimes the technically correct choice, according to an old rule book, might actually be the less effective choice for clear communication.
Precisely. If forcing a sentence to avoid a final preposition makes it sound awkward and unnatural, or if insisting on the formal due to distinction in casual conversation makes you sound pedantic, have you really communicated better? Maybe not.
So, the provocative thought for you to ponder is this. True proficiency involves knowing the rules, yes, but perhaps more importantly, knowing when prioritizing clarity, natural flow, and current convention might actually be more skillful than rigid adherence to historical grammar.
What other unwritten rules or perhaps outdated prescriptions might you be following, maybe unconsciously, that could sometimes get in the way of just communicating clearly and effectively? Something to think about.
Definitely something to think about. We hope this deep dive helps you navigate the complex world of English prepositions with a bit more confidence.
Keep practicing, keep noticing the patterns, and don't be afraid of the idioms.
We'll talk to you soon on the next deep dive.